turn right and assemble on the paving stones outside the cathedral, please. And toilets are outside to the left and the right of the door through which you came. So welcome everybody, whether you're here in person or whether you're online. Apologies for absence. Apologies, Jeremy.
Yes.
Substitutions, I believe.
A number of apologies and substitutions, Chair. Councillor Richard Eddy is substituting for Councillor Badr Udin, who gives his apologies. Apologies from Councillor Paula O'Rourke. Councillor Ellie Freeman is substituting. Councillor Mohammed Makawi. Councillor Abby Finch is substituting. And Councillor Lisa Stone, Councillor George Kalaschioni is substituting.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest for any? Councillor Eddy?
Chairman, it's not actually a declaration of interest, but just for accuracy and transparency. Obviously, I determined both applications, but also on the second one, Baltic Wolf, with my Homes and Housing Delivery Act last summer. Myself and the chairman received officer advice to transfer the affordable housing element to actually an RP or housing association. We actually agreed with that. I played no role in the subsequent selection of what was sovereign, nor was I involved in any discussions about the scheme. So on the advice of the legal director, I've no declaration of interest there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Nope. Minutes of the previous meeting. No one has raised with me any concerns about the minutes of the previous meeting. Indeed, quite a number of you were not here at that previous meeting. So does anyone have anything they would like to raise regarding the, or am I okay to sign them? Thank you. In that case, I sign them as a correct record of the previous meeting. The action sheet has nothing on it. And appeals, this is a chance for, I think Jonathan will give us a presentation on what's going on with current appeals and a chance for councillors to raise any questions they may have on that matter. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there were two sort of general comments that I just wanted to make around appeals. The first is just in relation to the list of appeals that we've received. That is unfortunately looking a little bit longer than usual. That's really in part because we have received appeals in relation to a number of street hub installations, which are essentially sort of digital adverts. There are both sort of full and advert consents that are associated with each site. So I think around sort of 25 sites or so that we've had there. And also just in relation to the decisions received, I know at previous DC committees, it has been noted by members that the percentage of appeals being allowed was of concern, so that was noted. And we have just noticed recently that this situation has been improving. So I think, yeah, that's just worth noting. And again, so my thanks to officers really for their assessments in relation to those. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure we want to thank officers for obviously making good decisions which don't result in us spending a lot of resource on tackling them later on. Anybody got any questions? Any particular things or general things? Councillor Breckles?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quickie on number 12, Eastern 203 Church Road, Redfield. I was just wondering if there's any news on that one.
So this is in relation to the appeal against non-determination, is that correct? Yeah. We haven't actually received a decision on that yet, or an update. And in fact, it is one of our kind of longest standing sort of appeals that are in the system. In terms of sort of the timetable for that, we've cleared the kind of submission stages. So the LPA has submitted its statement and also made its final comments. So we are really just awaiting a decision on that now.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Okay, shall we take a look at the enforcement notices?
On enforcement notices, there are no enforcement notices to report, but we have again included an enforcement update report which just provides an overview again of the work of the team in terms of the cases that they're receiving and dealing with.
Thank you. Comments or questions on that from anyone? No? Okay, thank you. Then we move to the first of the two applications before us today, which is St Luke's Road, and have a number of public forum questions. Excuse me while I just get my technology to switch over. Good. There should be a roving microphone up the top there so members of the public can speak clearly to us all. And we've got quite a number of public forum comments and questions today, so statements and questions. So I've asked Jeremy just to time things for us to make sure that we get through this as speedily as possible. So Stephen Flannery, please.
Good evening, I'm Donald's Chief Executive. Since being granted planning permission in 2022, the cost of building has dramatically risen, with Bristol now the world's 8th most expensive city to build in. It has taken 3 years of hard work to find a way to actually get these homes built, but we are finally there and have a contractor waiting to get building. Your own experts agree we can afford to deliver 25 affordable homes, that's 11.3%. We've spoken to more than 30 registered providers to find ways to increase that, but there has been no interest. These homes will be at LHA rates and offered to young people on your housing waiting list. These will be lovely, bright, spacious, energy-efficient homes with lots of new green public open space. We do appreciate the collaborative approach taken by your officers, and we hope you accept that this is the best compromise under difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. George Lewis.
Good evening, members. I speak to you tonight as both the applicant's planning agent and as a Bristolian. I grew up in Bempster Down, but I had to move to South Wales due to the costs of housing in my own city. This crisis stems from a lack of supply. Bristol needs more homes of all kinds. In 2022, this committee gave permission for 221 homes at this site. Today's Section 73 application seeks just 2 changes that will unlock this inviable scheme. The Health and Safety Executive is content with the walkways, and the Council's own viability assessor has confirmed that 25 affordable homes at local housing allowance levels is the maximum amount that this scheme can provide. Both changes fully comply with planning policy. As approved, every home will continue to meet space standards and have its own balcony. By approving this application, you will be unlocking 221 new homes, including 25 homes for people stuck on your housing waiting list. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ed Plowden.
Thank you, Chair. The officer report says this is a finely balanced decision. At the first committee, there were over 300 objections and a petition of over 4,000 signatures objecting to the proposed heights in Mead Street. The scheme is recommended for rejection based on a poor living environment for future residents, harm to the conservation area and substandard design quality. Every committee member in favour last time specifically cited that 30% affordable housing as their reason to overturn the officer recommendation. But this miracle turned out to be a mirage. Approving the scheme now would undermine the Bristol Temple Quarter's vision for high-quality, genuinely affordable homes and could jeopardise regeneration frameworks in Temple Quarter, White House Lane and beyond. As the freeholder, the council could stop this. We should be renegotiating to up the level of affordable housing, just like at Baltic Wharf, rather than passively accepting the viability report. This development provides neither affordable housing nor quality design, and I hope the committee will agree that this is enough to tilt this finely balanced decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stephen Wickham.
The 2021 application was granted by members against the recommendation of refusal from officers, not least as it was not compliant with the Mead Street framework. In members' deliberations, the policy-compliant provision of affordable housing was a significant factor, and Bristol Civic Society objected to the application on a number of grounds, including height, massing, impact on views, and the quality of the living environment. The provision of the proposed quantum of affordable housing was, however, a feature we supported. The Society therefore feels strongly that any reduction in the affordable housing provision, which councillors considered and welcomed when deciding to approve the application, should be resisted. This would dilute one of the few mitigating elements of an otherwise harmful development. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our statements, and so over to Kana for the presentation, I believe. Thank you. Thanks.
The application that we have in front of me is for development at the land of the corner of York Road and St Luke's Road in Manchester, and it's a Section 73 application, which is for minor material amendments. So in my presentation, I'm going to go into a bit of detail about what this means and what's proposed. To start with, it's important to say that officers have taken legal advice, which has confirmed that the current proposals can be considered under the Section 73 process. There's already a permission in place, and that establishes the principle of development, and I'll say more about that in a minute, but it's important to say early on that it establishes a fallback position, which could theoretically be built. In front of us now, we've got a Section 73 application for minor material amendments. So to clarify what we can consider, or reasonably consider, I should say, the local planning authority can consider any changes being proposed compared to what was initially approved. And the LPA can also consider any material considerations that have changed since the previous approval. However, it would be unreasonable to revisit whether the principle of development is acceptable, since this has already been established by the previous consent. So the previous application, first of all, planning permission was granted on the 17th of May 2023 for 221 C3 residential units, and those were built to rent, and 651 square metres of commercial floor space, Class E. As set out in my report, the officer recommendation at that stage was to refuse, but committee members voted to approve, and permission was subsequently granted. Turning to the current application, there are some changes now being proposed compared to the previously approved scheme, and that includes the introduction of external walkways to one block, and that's for fire safety purposes, and those would be to all floors apart from to the ground floor. And also there would be a reduction in the level of affordable housing from the previously approved 30% affordable housing to 11.3%, capped at local housing allowance maximum rents. So this is also known as social rent, which makes it more affordable for people who can't afford other types of accommodation. And that 11.3 figure was come to following a viability assessment, which Jim is now going to say a little bit more about. So over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Kana. So I won't spend too much time on this, but this slide broadly gives an indication as to where we are. The applicant, as part of the application, submitted a viability report produced for them by Savills. And the conclusion that Savills had drawn was that the scheme can now only provide 10% affordable housing, which is 22 dwellings. As members will be aware, we do now and have done for a long, long time. We don't take these things at face value. We commission our own independent advice to see what independent advisors consider can be provided, and we commissioned Cushman & Wakefield to have a look at this one for us. A significant number of the Savills inputs Cushman and Wakefield agreed with, but there were a few that they didn't. And in cases where they didn't agree, they included what they felt to be reasonable inputs. And as a result of that process, Cushman and Wakefield concluded that the scheme was marginally more viable than Savills had suggested. And by marginally, they concluded that the scheme could provide 25 units, which is 11.3% rather than 10%, and a small financial contribution of £78,000. Crudely, Cushman and Wakefield thought the scheme was there was about £500,000 more in it than Savills had thought. Cushman's presented that report to us. We presented that to the applicant. The applicant went away and thought about it and came back and conceded or concluded that they would be able to provide 25 affordable housing units and the contribution. So we have an agreed position on the amount of affordable housing that can be provided, which is as set out in the report and on the slide. And as far as affordable housing is concerned, we're satisfied that that is the maximum that can be provided, and we will be seeking to secure that through a Section 106 agreement. And the agreement will also include a viability review to be undertaken before the development is occupied to see if the market has improved significantly in that time to enable any more affordable housing to be provided. Okay.
This slide shows where the site is located. It's a site that's already been cleared, but it was previously occupied by Bart's Ingredients, which was use class B2. The site has got York Road there just to the north, and the River Avon and Langdon Street Bridge to the north. It's located within the Temple Quarter Enterprise Zone and also lies within the Mead Street Development Brief Area. And that's a aerial shot of it, showing where it is in red. This is the ground floor layout, and there's no change proposed to the ground floor layout compared to what was previously approved. However, as I mentioned earlier, there has been a change to the northeast elevation, which you can see here. You've got the approved scheme above and now proposed below these external walkways, and that's just along the northeast elevation, and that's for fire safety purposes. And the Health and Safety Executive has looked at these and are satisfied with them. That's what a typical floor plan looked like on the approved scheme. And here you can see the orange circle there. I've just circled the added additional walkways there. And as set out in my report, there was a condition on the previous permission that the windows that face out onto those walkways on each floor should be obscurely glazed, and that was in order to avoid prejudicing the development potential of any adjacent site and also to protect the amenity of neighbours. This condition would remain, and should permission be given in my list of proposed conditions, we'd also add a condition requiring a management plan to be submitted and approved by the local authority, and that would be about how the external walkways would be maintained and how access would be restricted to avoid them being used as amenity spaces, because use of amenity spaces could have impacts on the privacy of some units that face onto the walkway. So they'd only be used for emergency evacuation and escape purposes. I've just put in this slide about transport and highway changes, because whilst I said that no changes are proposed on the plans, we have had some discussions, no change to the ground floor plan. We have had some discussions with the applicant to resolve a couple of transport and highways issues. The Bellmouth access onto Mead Street, which is circled in the middle of that slide that you can see in orange, on the plans, it's shown as a Bellmouth which would give priority to vehicles, where that's actually the developer has agreed for that to be replaced with a vehicular crossover, which gives a bit more priority to pedestrians. That will be done via permission. So whilst the plans look the same, there's a condition requiring that to be changed. Also, we would condition any doors that are immediately adjacent to the highway on the ground floor to be inwards opening as opposed to outwards opening, shown on the plans, and this is things that people have raised before. And I think it's important to say that Mead Street would still be wide enough to accommodate any buses or other forms of public transport without being impeded. So there were concerns about that previously, but that issue has been resolved. And in other respects, the proposals are just the same as when they were previously looked at and considered by committee. In terms of the consultation response, there have been 28 objections from neighbours and amenity societies, and those cover a range of issues, including concerns about the design, the reduction in the level of affordable housing, concerns about living conditions for future occupiers, pressures on parking, amongst other things. As I mentioned earlier, there's no objection from the Health and Safety Executive, and internal consultees have raised the same concerns as before relating to design and heritage, and have suggested conditions relating to the walkways to make sure that they're managed and maintained properly. And the transport issues are considered to be overcome as far as possible, subject to some conditions, but that's taking the previous consent into account. So in my report, I've talked about matters which officers advise need to be weighed in the planning balance. The previous decision does need to be given significant weight because, as I mentioned earlier, it represents a fallback position which could theoretically be built. When considering the reduction in the levels of affordable housing, this benefit now attracts less weight insofar as the levels of affordable housing have now reduced. However, that has gone through a process of viability testing, so we are now confident we have a deliverable scheme. And also, the overall housing numbers remain the same, so the scheme is still meeting the need for housing in the city. We've considered the changing economic climate, and we've heard from the applicant on this, and I've also made some notes on this in my committee report. There's a general acceptance that the economic climate has altered since the previous committee decision, and in my report I highlight some sections from the Council's draft economic strategy, which refers to matters including heightened accommodation costs, pressures on land, and concerns about inequalities. And the applicant's supporting documentation refers to an increase in the cost of building in Bristol. In terms of other matters to be weighed in the planning balance, there are some highways improvements proposed, but these are the same as before in that there is Section 106 contribution to highways improvements. So this needs to be done to comply with policy, so I'd say we need to give that limited weight. And then there are other matters which objectors have raised, including concerns about trees, parking pressures, air quality and other matters. And the situation on these matters haven't changed, so it would be unreasonable to refuse on these grounds given the previous consent, so we'd give that limited weight. So in conclusion, the previous officer recommendation was for refusal on the basis that the benefits arising from the proposals didn't outweigh officer concerns about design and heritage, the future living environment, and concerns about highways. And at that time, members discussed the scheme and voted to approve the application on the grounds that the benefits flowing from the affordable housing outweighed concerns about the design and other issues. Previous concerns about design and livability and heritage do still remain, although the third reason for refusal is broadly considered to be resolved, and we've got some additional conditions here showing vehicular crossover plus those inward opening doors that I mentioned. The affordable housing offer has been reduced, but this has been subject to a rigorous viability testing in accordance with established methodology. And so the officer view is that if we don't accept the reduction on the basis of the information that we have in front of us, the site would not be developed. So that's something important we have to consider there. So the previous approval is very much a material consideration. It establishes the principle of development and a fallback scheme. And there's also been this change in the economic climate. So officers have given considerable weight to these 2 points, which is the previous decision and the altered economic climate. And whilst the recommendation is finely balanced, officers consider that the planning balance tips in favour of the proposals, and the application is thus recommended for approval. And so members are asked to consider whether they agree with this view. Thank you.
Thanks, Kana and Jim. Questions, please. Councillor Gooch.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm sure I'd read something about Juliet balconies somewhere instead of the actual balconies. It looks like they are being changed, but it's not in the slide deck. Are they changing from every flat having a balcony to them all having Juliet balconies? Or have I misread?
My understanding is that everything's staying the same apart from the addition of the external walkways. I can bring up the slide which shows. So that's that's the typical floor plan. And that's what's now proposed. So there are still balconies being proposed there. Some of them are set in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking about.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is on page 38 of the notes, but it was decision 17/10/23. So is this something that was already...
So are you referring to page 17 of my report?
So that didn't go ahead, so, okay.
Would you like to have a look for that, Kana, while I take another question? Is that okay with you,
Yeah.
Caroline?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just
Okay.
confused.
Anybody else? Or we... Councillor, sorry, it's... Which one? Who was it put their hand up first? All three of you. Right, we'll start at this end then. Guy?
Hi, thank you. In relation to the balance, and I'm just trying to get my head around this, in respect of what is and isn't a material consideration for planning committee today, it sounds like we're saying it wouldn't be reasonable to make a decision on the basis of several of the things that were objected to in the original scheme and formed the basis for the original officer recommendation to refuse. I might have gotten this wrong, because obviously later in the report it goes on to talk about tilted balance. And obviously if this was a finely balanced application, the loss of the social housing that originally weighed so heavily for the committee that made the first decision is now reduced. Surely that then doesn't alleviate the tilt on the other side, as it were. The issues and the problems and the things that was balanced against are still present and can still be taken into account by this committee, surely.
In a sense, yes, in that there's still a balancing exercise to be done, and it's for members to consider how much weight they want to give to the different things. I think the point a point that's important to make is that the scheme's been through viability testing, and so there are two. On the one hand, we've got the consent that's already been given, which has got the 30% affordable housing, and there's benefits arising from that. And we now have a scheme which gives a lower level of affordable housing, but the same overall number of housing units. So there's a different type of benefit there, and it's been through viability testing, which means that deliverability is important to consider here. And there's nothing in policy really which says that we should give more weight to one over the other, because policy tells us that it's reasonable for us to consider viability testing and go through that process. I don't know whether Jonathan or Jim have got anything else to add to that.
I think the only thing I would just add as well is I think it's just acknowledged that there were different views expressed in the debate previously, but overall as a previous approval, so a previous consent that has been granted, that would be material.
So just to confirm though, on page 61 in the report where it says, it would be unreasonable to refuse on matters where there has been no material change in policy or the applicant's proposal. if there were issues that weighed against granting this proposal that are no longer outweighed by the removal of the social housing, it would be reasonable to take those into consideration, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think the point I was trying to make in that previously people had raised concerns about things like trees and pressures on parking and things like that. Those things haven't changed, so it's the planning balance that needs to be considered now, as opposed to just those things in isolation.
Thank you. No, but just for clarity, it would be reasonable to turn it down on those bases, wouldn't it? If the committee was minded to feel that the balance had shifted, those would remain reasons for refusal.
Yeah, if that's the conclusion that members come to, that's not the conclusion that officers have come to, though.
Thank you. I'm moving this direction. Councillor Calisconi, I believe. No, Councillor Finch. Oh, Councillor Freeman, sorry.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions, and it's partly about what can be considered as a material consideration. So the council is the freeholder for this site, is that right? But yes. Can that be brought in as a material consideration? No. No. That's what I thought. Okay. And can you just explain a little bit about how it fits in with the Temple Quarter framework? Just because obviously some of us are new to this.
Yes, it's within the Temple Quarter enterprise zone, and it's also within an area which has a development brief attached to it, which is the Mead Street development. So obviously there are policies there on the Temple Quarter enterprise zone, which broadly support development in the area, but obviously it's got to be assessed against all policies, and the usual planning policy has got to be applied.
And are you happy that, given that this has gone for recommendation, that would support the Temple Quarter framework in terms of affordability across the site? Happy might be the wrong word.
I think here again it comes back to the fact that we can't really revisit the principle of development here because we've had that previous permission and we've gone through a viability testing process. So
that's not what I'm not questioning that. I'm just questioning the 11% because obviously that's a different figure to what was previously approved, and I'm just trying to understand how that affects sort of what else is happening across Temple Quarter. Are there going to be other sites that need to have a higher level in order to reach the kind of the levels that you want across the whole site, or is that not a factor?
Sorry, Councillor Freeman, we're still...
That's fine.
So we have to assess every planning application on its merits. And, it may well be that the Temple Quarter framework says we want to achieve 35 or 40% affordable housing throughout all of those development sites that comes forward. The reality of the world we're in at the moment is that an awful lot of that 35 or 40% affordable housing, or whatever percentage it happens to be, is likely to come outside of the planning system. So through housing associations developing 100% affordable sites themselves, or by putting grant into sites, which doesn't happen through the planning system. There's no getting away from it that at the moment and moving forward, the economic challenge of development is very high, particularly with high density development. We'll come on to this again, Baltic Wharf later on, and it would not surprise me if this is not the first time we're in this type of a committee discussing these sort of issues. Bristol is expensive to build in, and as much as anything else, the repercussions of the Building Safety Act, which of course is a very good thing to stop Grenfell type issues happening again, has meant that tall buildings have to have 2 cores in them, so 2 lots of stairwells, 2 lots of lift shafts, and that means you're selling much lower percentage than what you're building. And I mean, however you look at it, the unfortunate reality is that makes sites less viable. So a reduction in affordable housing on this site is not something that you could say, oh, well, the next door site must therefore provide 35%, 47%, or have you to mitigate up. We have to look at each site as it comes forward, and I think the role of Section 106 is probably going to diminish in the delivery of affordable housing over the next economic cycle. It's just the reality of where we are, I'm afraid.
Thank you for explaining that. It's really helpful.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Finch, yes, sorry.
Thank you very much. And it's my first planning committee, so apologies if I'm asking silly questions. The first question was about that, I've forgotten the exact amount, the 78,000 figure. What are the conditions on what that can be used for? And I guess my confusion is, if it can't be used to put, another affordable home or more affordable housing in this development, why is it more likely to be able to deliver affordable housing elsewhere?
Don't worry about it being your first committee and it being a silly question. It's not. It's probably my 101st committee and I still get things wrong and get confused. So don't worry about that at all. The way you do planning viability is in effect, you look at a scheme as a wholly open market scheme, so where every property will be sold. And then what you do is you add in affordable housing. So if there's an open market scheme, let's pretend there's a £10 million surplus. You add in affordable housing one at a time until that surplus goes down to nil. Okay, so the surplus is what's available to provide affordable housing with. And usually each time you add in an affordable house, affordable property, the surplus will go down by £130,000, something along those lines, to reflect the cost of an affordable housing property being provided. So we add them in, and then we've got to a situation where with 25 affordable housing units, there is a surplus of £78,000. If we put 26 affordable housing units, there will be a deficit. Does that make sense? So because you can't provide 3/5 of an affordable house, that £78,000 to get the surplus down to nil is taken as an off-site contribution towards the delivery of affordable housing elsewhere in the city. So what will happen is the developer will pay that contribution upon occupation of the development. There'll be some other affordable housing contributions from other developments around the place, and the council's housing team will look to use those contributions to help to deliver either council housing schemes that we're delivering, so our own schemes, or help our housing association partners to deliver schemes. So it's in effect a financial contribution that's put into other affordable housing somewhere else in the city.
Thank you. So it's less than one affordable home, basically.
Absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you mind if I just ask another question?
You're welcome.
It's similar to questions that have been asked before, but yeah, I'm trying to get my head around it. So the thing I'm struggling to understand is that obviously when this came to committee before, the balance of, affordable houses and more housing on the one side being a positive, and then, those various other considerations being on the negative side, officers deemed it to be the balance was tipped and recommended to refuse it. Now, the main difference seems to me that one of the positives has gone, and I realise that there's this viability issue, but I guess I wonder...
Chairman, are we going to get a question?
Yes, can we move to the question, please?
Okay, yeah. Yes, so I wondered what's changed other than the decision of the committee before?
I know what you mean, and I think it's a fair question. I think one of the big things that has changed is the previous consent. So that establishes a fallback position. And when we're now weighing things in the planning balance, as you say, previously officers recommended refusal, now officers recommending approval. But we have to consider the fact that we've got that previous consent and take that into account when we're making our decision now. Because theoretically, that could be built out. That previous proposal could be built out by this developer or another developer or anybody else who wanted to take that on. That's a theoretical possibility, but it could happen. So we have to give weight to that. It's called a fallback position, but it means something that if permission was refused today, that consent still exists. Is that a fair way of explaining it, Jonathan? Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Helpful. Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Poultney and Councillor Gooch, did you have your hand up? My apologies. No problem. Councillor Pulteney.
Thank you. No, two quick ones. One was just in terms of, I was just looking at the viability study, the C&W one, and I just wanted to check, because obviously it refers to the developer has a degree of profit safeguarded as part of the calculation as to what's viable. Is the costs of doing the building and acquiring the land versus what they'll get from selling it or presumably renting it, although that doesn't seem to factor into it. I just wanted to check, when it says the developer's profit is calculated as 10% profit on costs, is that 10% of the construction costs or 10% of the construction costs plus the contingency, the professional fees, the CIL, the commercial leasing and the finance?
Yeah, 10% profit on cost will be construction costs. It may well include, you've got your base construction costs, either the cost of putting the thing in the ground. You'll then have maybe abnormal costs of clearing contamination from the site. There'll be external costs, which are things like providing the landscaping and the highways infrastructure, etc. So those costs would usually be included. Costs of development, finance and SIL would be excluded.
I see. So it's just the 5.26 million profit.
I've not got the report open at this moment in time. Can you tell me what page you're on, Councillor Paul?
So this will be page 2 of the C&W viability assessment.
That'll be the executive summary. Here we go. Right. Bear with me. Let's get right. Here we go. So the developer's profit will be 10% profit on costs, which would be 10% of £52.6 million, which will be whatever that happens to be, 5.26 million.
That's great, thank you.
The reason, go on.
Oh, sorry. And the other query was around again, it's around the viability assessment. And I just wanted to check. A moment ago, we said each case on its merits, which is obviously a bit of a mantra in development control. I assume this viability assessment obviously only applies to this specific application. That's to say, if someone else came with a more viable scheme that could produce more, in other words, the risk that we are, ensuring that the site goes. Apology, Councillor Eddie seems to come in.
I think he's pointing out you're getting very hypothetical there, actually. What we're looking at the application before is in the light of the fact that there is a fallback position for the applicant.
Oh, yes, but also for us, I suppose. That was my question. It's that to say this scheme is unviable doesn't necessarily mean that another scheme wouldn't be viable that has yet to come forward.
We have to consider this application, not some
Exactly.
hypotheticals.
I think Councillor Eddie's point is well made. Guy, do you have a question now?
It was whether or not the officer, when saying, if we turn this down, we might be ruling out anything being built, simply meant this scheme being built rather than the fallback position, or in fact, any other scheme that might come forward. And that's the case, yes? Someone else could come forward with a more viable scheme that did deliver the social housing.
Many things could happen.
Yes.
But what's before us
Chair,
now
this
is
isn't
a
helping.
scheme.
This is just, it's hypothetical. It's the fallback or this, and it's possible that the fallback, if that's what they fall back on, it doesn't happen at all. In which case, someone will have to come up with a fresh idea.
Your comments, Guy, are better made. Your speculations or comments are better made in the discussion, I would say, rather than asking the officers hypothetical questions. Councillor Finch.
Hello, sorry, I know people want to get this discussion, but just hopefully it's a quick one. My understanding is that in the local plan, we have a condition that new developments need I think it's a 20% affordable housing. I may be wrong about that. So if that is the case, then this change brings it below that. And I wondered how the sort of local plan fits into that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fair question, and one that comes up on a very, very regular basis. Every local plan in the country has an affordable housing policy in it. And every local plan in the country's affordable housing policy says X percentage, could be 10, 20, 30, 40, and it will say inevitably in there somewhere subject to scheme viability. So that's at a high level, the high level of viability work that's done to support a local plan identifies really the maximum amount of affordable housing that could reasonably be provided, and that's the percentage that will go in. But the subject to viability bit acknowledges that there are a multitude of potential development sites in any local authority's area, each with their own constraints, opportunities and challenges. And therefore, it allows for sites to come forward and be acceptable in policy terms with a percentage of affordable housing that is lower than the amount specified in the local plan. And that's not a Bristol specific thing, Councillor Finch. You'll find that in every local plan anywhere across the country.
Thank you. I think we'll move to the discussion now, actually. Councillor Breckles, followed by Councillor Pontney, followed by Councillor Durston, followed by Councillor Gooch.
I just want my answer.
Sorry, you wanted the answer about the Juliet balconies?
Yes, I can answer that. There was a previous application before this one for a non-material amendment, also known as an NMA application, and that did propose the removal of some balconies and replacement with Juliet balconies. That the council didn't give that NMA. Yeah, hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you. That's clear. So we move on to the discussion now, and Councillor Breckles will be the first person to.
Yeah, I'm thinking that I'd like to send this. I'd like to defer, and I'd like to see what we can get if officers and the developers can get round the table and see if we can come up with something a bit better than what we're stuck with at the moment. That's my inclination.
Thank you. I think it's Councillor Pontney. Then, so was there somebody else, or was it Richard? Was it you next? Sorry, it was Lisa and then Richard. Apologies. So, Guy.
Thank you, Chair. I should say, Councillor Eddy, I think I'm sure did indicate first, but I'll give it a go.
I apologise if I got that wrong. But
no, it was just my feelings are similar to, I think, to Councillor Breckles. This strikes me as being it was a finely. I think I would charitably have said it was a finely balanced application the first time around. I would have agreed with the officer's recommendation the first time around. I find it very hard to justify this amount of time later saying, well, we've lost this amount of social housing from the planning balance, and now it's a recommendation for grant. I appreciate the viability argument in respect to the loss of the social housing, but I think that has to be weighed against the possibility, as I say, I might feel I was being hypothetical. This site is there currently. If we were to grant this comes forward, we deliver what officers originally felt to be a substandard scheme that didn't deliver enough, that now doesn't deliver enough social housing either. I'd rather give that opportunity to a developer that is willing to give it a go. Thanks.
Thank you. I think Councillor Eddy and then you, Lisa. Sorry, I think I missed Richard's hand because it wasn't put up very prominently.
Chairman, I make no apology for addressing my comments to actually the two germane changes, which are the only ones we can determine as material planning considerations. Those are the element of affordable housing and the change to the stairways. I was also the only member of this committee who sat on the previous determination. In fact, I chaired the committee then. And it's true to say members were impressed that this was a scheme, an imaginative mixed-use scheme, which would redevelop Brownfield site, which we wanted to achieve. We were impressed that the applicant came forward with 30% affordable housing, which was always going to be challenging, as well as commercial and employment use, of course. We also were aware very much that there was financial contributions of almost 5 million quid, which is not to be sniffed at. And if I may say, the two Green War councillors actively supported this application, saying it as a useful catalyst for redevelopment. With regard to the affordable housing, Councillor Beckles and I spent most of this afternoon here in the Economy and Skills Committee. We established a special development viability working group, because as the applicant said, Bristol's is faced with huge challenges for development. In the last 2 years, it's gone from being 12th worst city, most expensive city in the world to develop, to 10th last year, to 8th this year. I think we were all horrified by that. I'm not pretending we can address some of the macroeconomic issues, but we can be productive, we can be pragmatic and realistic at a local level. And I'm not talking of ditching decent planning standards and actually throwing that to the winds. I'm talking about dealing with developers in a pragmatic, helpful way. Now, we've heard there have been huge changes in the economic landscape. And we obviously, this impacts on the Baltic Wolf scheme next. I personally think we have a scheme here, still good brownfield regeneration scheme offering 1 in 8 affordable housing, plus of off-site financial contribution, plus transport gain, plus £5 million financial package. It does seem to be something worth supporting. As far as the walkways, that's required. None of us will have issues with fire trace safety improvements, of course. That seems a constructive way which our officers don't approve. So I would say I don't think there's any gain in deferral at all. Let's grab the bull by the horns and move ahead. The applicant, we've heard, has a construction company and people ready to go if we give consent. Frankly, further delay and procrastination's not going to change one thing. So let's approve the scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. Councillor Durston.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that this is a really finely balanced decision. I really appreciate officers' efforts in reassessing the scheme, and I also do recognise the challenges that developers face in light of changing economic conditions. But I do have significant concerns about the direction of travel that this represents, particularly on affordable housing and design quality, and the precedent that we may set today. When this application was originally granted, the committee overturned the officer recommendation for refusal on balance, with the public benefit of 30% affordable housing being the main factor. Now we're being asked to accept a big reduction in that to just 11.3%. And I don't think we can ignore the reality that this really weakens the public benefit that previously justified approving the scheme. I think we have to consider the precedent this sets, that if developers can secure consent with an ambitious affordable housing officer only to downgrade that, that might affect our credibility as a planning committee. And I think that if we're going to ensure, if we're going to approve schemes where we know that some things are substandard, we have to make sure that there is meaningful public benefit in return. And this revised proposal, I think as it stands, no longer meets that test. So I would also support deferral of this application to come up with something better.
Thank you. Councillor Calcioni.
The way I see it is a balance between the new regulations and the cost of less affordable homes. I feel as Bristol's free available developable land is running out, we need to make sure that what is built is fit for purpose, and what we desperately need is affordable housing. So, yeah, I think I'm leaning a certain way here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards echoing what Lisa and Fabian have said. yes, the prices are going up all the time. Although I'm cognizant of the fact that because this was on a knife edge to begin with, it was the miraculous affordable housing that swung it. So without that, it is. But then it's in front of us, and they could just go back and build the other one, which then wouldn't even be fire compliant. So we need the fire compliance, obviously. I think I would be, because I'm very much in two minds about it, because any housing's better than no housing, right? We need something to get built. Just the simple market dynamics of having more housing available should hopefully bring down rates. Well, it should do. But I would definitely, because I'm on the fence about it, I would support what Fabian says about just deferring it for a month and just seeing if there's another way around, trying to see if there's anything else that we could do, like what's happening at Baltic Wharf. Is there something that we can do? And if there's not, then fine, we'll have to make a decision next month.
Thank you. Any further comments before we move to a vote? Okay, in line with our process as laid out on the first page, I will first of all propose the officer recommendation, which is for approval. Do I have a seconder for that proposal?
Chairman.
Seconded by Councillor Eddy. If you wish to vote in favour of approval as recommended by the officers, please raise your hand. One, Councillor Eddy. Okay, thank you. That has fallen. And against or abstention? Sorry. Against. Could I have against? My apologies. Abstentions.
Sorry, can you do that again, just so I can count that again?
Against. Hands up,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7. Okay, thank you. Abstentions? 1. Apologies, not following my own process. That therefore has fallen. I am, one moment, Councillor Breckles. I am now going to follow the procedure and propose deferral because we wish to decline refuse this application. Do I have a seconder for that, Councillor Breckles? Okay, so the motion is to defer this application. Could you raise your hand?
Sorry, just before we do, Chair, would it be helpful just to clarify what issues you would like the officers to?
We will ask the officers to examine that as part of the deferral process.
Okay, I just wonder if you want to do that before the vote, or
that would be a fair.
It's to address.
One moment, Of course, is that okay? Wish me to be more precise.
Yeah, that would be helpful, please. Yeah, if there is a motion to defer a decision to allow more time for members to propose grounds for refusal if needed, and request that we bring a report back, then it would just be helpful to know, what those concerns are.
I think it's best to say that our concerns would be that the planning balance has been tipped in a different direction on this application. And whilst we consider that the previous application and the outcome of that is material, we do have a different balance here, and we would like to take a look at this again. Is that a reasonable? Is that too complex, or would you like to restate it in a more? I think I summarised people's feelings well. Whether I did it well enough for a lawyer, I don't know. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's the balance we feel has been tipped in a different direction.
By the viability assessment, yeah.
By the changes in the offer of affordable housing means that tips the balance, which was previously established on the basis of a different offer of affordable housing. That fair enough, Councillor Pulteney?
Yes, Chair, I wouldn't want to fetter officers' discretion. I don't remember every part of the discussion perfectly. I had in mind, I thought we were moving towards a wording akin to, based on the reasons outlined in the discussion, to give officers, I won't say discretion, but the ability to clarify anything from the discretion they need to with members in the meantime, but without limiting it to any particular thing that's thought up on the spur at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's better we give one simple reason, and the thing that has changed is the affordable housing. So that would be the reason that we give. Councillor Breckles?
So basically what we're saying is try and come back with something better on the affordable housing?
Well, that was obviously the issue that has changed.
That's the issue that's
we have
balanced,
there is a fallback position which has been established on other matters, and that this change has tipped the planning balance.
But we can give officers discretion about how that's done.
Of course they have discretion. Of course they have discretion, but they will need to bring back something to us here that with a better planning balance, in our opinion, than is currently on offer. Okay, can I ask for a seconder for that, please? That's Councillor Breckles. So if you would like to vote in support of the motion to defer, please raise your hand now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Chair.
Thank you. Against? 1. Abstentions? 0. Okay, so the application is refused, deferred for the upcoming meeting, and when officers will bring us a further report for our consideration. Thank you. We're going to now take a break of 10 minutes, which takes us to 12 minutes past 7. Councillor Pulteney, which is quite sufficient. I know where the toilets are. So I will see you all at 12 minutes past 7. Next application, we have got everyone, haven't we? Which is the Caravan Club site. And we have questions. I'll do with the questions from the public first, and then moving on to the statements. Questions 1, 2 and 3 from Mr. Mark Ashdown. If Mark is here, I've seen him. Over to you. You have received written answers, and those are published in the papers. So if you wish to ask something else, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah. I'm afraid I don't think question 2's been answered, so I'll ask it again. Will the LPA disclose a copy of the current use valuation of the site report showing how the site valuation of £1,203,886 was arrived at? The answer I've been given doesn't actually answer that question. It answers something else.
Yeah, I'll do my best, Mark. The 1.203 million is nothing to do with Bristol City Council at all. That is a figure that was derived at by Redloft, who are a consultant acting on behalf of the applicant. The council's view of the land value is that it is £1.6 million, and that is advice that we received from Cushman and Wakefield, who looked at the viability for us. The council's property team obviously dealt with the price to be paid for the land. They commissioned a report by Savills. I have seen that. I don't have a copy of it, and it's not in my gift to make it public. It is not part of the planning process. As far as the planning process is concerned, what's relevant is what is a reasonable benchmark land value, and that's what we would be considering as part of the deliberations today, and we believe that to be £1.6 million.
Thanks, Jim. Anything further, Mark?
In respect of the answers to question 1 and 3, just to be clear, if this application is approved, will there be an obligation placed on the applicant to deliver affordable housing on site? Yes or no? Sufficient answer?
That's not part of the planning process.
Will there be an obligation placed on the applicant to provide affordable housing?
Not by this committee.
I'm not asking that question. I'm sorry, Chair. I'm asking the question. If this application is granted, will there be an obligation, a planning obligation, i.e. a Section 106 agreement, which will place an obligation to provide affordable housing?
I think the answer is no to that, isn't it? Jim will repeat what I've said, I think.
Nearly. If planning permission is granted this afternoon, or well into this evening, I guess, by the time we get there, the obligation on the applicant will be to provide a financial contribution of £242,012 towards the provision of off-site affordable housing, because the work done to establish the viability of the scheme shows that's the maximum that can be provided. And the reason that is in a financial contribution rather than on-site provision is that amount would deliver just 1 or 2 affordable dwellings, and no affordable housing provider would wish to take on such a small number of dwellings. So there will be a planning obligation, and it will be for the provision of a financial contribution towards the delivery of off-site affordable housing. I think if the audience, and Mark, if you refer to the committee report, I do think we clearly set that out in the committee report there.
That's one more question, really, that you had your final question, Mark. Yes, the answer to your question is this committee cannot mandate them to do that, but that does not mean that they will not do it. I think that's very clear, actually. I think that's a very clear answer.
Well,
thank you. Next is Valerie Steele.
Yeah, hi. At the June 2025 Strategy and Resources Committee, Stephen Baker said in regard to SNG's commitment to purchase the affordable housing, this is the quote, "We are seeking to be in contract in the next few weeks, and that is our aim, to secure that before we go to committee in July. This suggests that a contract can be made without this Section 73. Is that correct?"
again, sorry, is it Valerie? Valerie. Again, it's not a planning matter, Valerie, but I understand, and I think you'll probably have seen from the statements that have been made by SNG, who may or may not be here this evening, that they fully intend to contract with the council, but that their internal processes are that they cannot get final board approval until such time as there is a planning. And so, if you bear with me a minute, please, until such time as there is a planning permission or planning decision in place. I can't comment on what Stephen Baker said, I'm afraid. He speaks for Gorham Homes of his own free will, but the planning situation is that we are here to determine this application, and the position I believe that SNG have, and they will either be able to confirm or otherwise as part of the statements, is that they are only able to make a formal board decision once a planning permission has been, or once this planning application has been determined, and that's my understanding. I can't really tell you any more than that, to be honest.
So, when Stephen Baker said that they were going to secure a contract before this meeting, he didn't know what he was talking about?
It's not for me to comment on.
No, it's not for us to comment on in this meeting. You know. Well, it kind of was your second, but I'll allow you another one. It was half a question, wasn't it? So.
The committee report states that no viability testing was undertaken or necessary when the original application was being considered. And this was reasserted in answers to Councillor McAllister's question about the apparent change in viability. Why is this untruth being perpetuated when the Redcliffe report of 2023 stating that the scheme was unviable was available and indeed discussed at the original planning application committee?
Yeah, thank you again. What I mean by saying that the viability wasn't assessed, Valerie, is that, as I've said in the committee report, if an applicant offers a Yes, okay. If an applicant offers policy-compliant affordable housing, it is not in the local authority's gift to question that. The National Planning Policy Framework is clear that we must consider that the scheme is viable. So whilst there was a report produced by the applicant, for the applicant by Redloft, and it was submitted, it didn't need to be, they submitted it, that was a choice that was made, but as the planning authority, we took no notice of it at all. Because the scheme was providing 40% affordable housing, that was the stated position at the time, and the National Planning Policy Framework is clear on the matter. So that's why we, as a planning authority, didn't feel the need to look at it. It's not for us to second-guess applications.
Thank you. And the next is Martin Rands.
Thank you. Because the sovereign deal has not been signed, this should not be before you today. It should be deferred until Sovereign has signed a deal with Gorham. I mean, that's what Stephen Baker implied it was going to happen before this meeting, and it hasn't happened. My question, so it just wouldn't be right to decide today until that deal's done, because Sovereign will pull out. Because with all this viability trouble, they'll do their sums again, and they're not going to provide 40%. These other people can't provide, they're down to 11. Anyway, my question is this Section 73 really the only way to introduce a subsidy into the affordable scheme? Is there no other mechanism to enable this whilst retaining the obligation to deliver 40%?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really fair question, isn't it? And it's one that's vexed us quite a lot, to be honest, over the years. My colleague Louise Davidson may be able to amplify a little bit if she wishes on my answer, but social housing grant is managed by Homes England, so they're a government body, and they will not allow, my understanding is, their partner housing associations, of which Sovereign, which is now SNG, are one, to put social housing grant into affordable housing that is secured as subsidy-free through a Section 106 agreement. So we're a little bit hamstrung in that respect, in that if there is subsidy-free affordable housing secured, then that cannot be transferred to grant-funded affordable housing because the Homes England requirements don't allow for it. So that's really, Martin, why we're in the position of having to redetermine the application on the basis that the viability is not there.
A deal could have been struck between Gorham and Sovereign so that Sovereign contract to buy the social units from Gorham. That could be done at any time. No, because it's, as you say, it's outside the Section 106. It's nothing to do with you could come back to this committee. Gorham could say, a sovereign have contracted with us. They are going to buy the units off us. Then this would make sense, but that hasn't happened.
So sovereign, my understanding is, and again, I stand to be corrected, but sovereign made an offer to Gorham to purchase the units on a subsidy-free basis. And as time progressed, and as housing associations and councils across the land found over the last year, which I've mentioned in my report, that they are having to put more and more of their capital funding into upgrading their existing stock, what that meant was that there was less and less funding available to buy subsidy-free affordable housing. So the offer to deliver subsidy-free affordable housing, my understanding is that either ran out of time or was withdrawn. SNG in their statement may be able to pick up on that. So that offer was no longer on the table because they don't have, or they're not able to apply their own capital to subsidy-free affordable housing because they need it for their own purposes and their own stock. Therefore, the only capital they're able to apply to purchase affordable housing is for grant-funded affordable housing. That's my understanding.
It's struck. Until a contract is struck, Sovereign could they've reduced their offer by 22% already, they'll reduce it again by 22%, and this thing's just going to wither. So they need to sign a deal and then come back to the committee.
I think, Mr. Rands, this committee is the Development Control Committee of the Local Planning Authority. We consider applications that are put before us. We do not or cannot challenge the current administration's approach to providing social housing. We may have many questions about it. It's different from the previous administration. We're looking at the application in front of us today, and that is all. You have many questions. I suggest you take those to the Housing or the Economy committees because that's where they belong. Our next question is from Councillor Patrick McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two supplementaries, please. Question one, my first supplementary relates to my first question. Once Gorham is in this contract with SNG and Gorham is contractually obliged to build the 40% affordable homes, if Gorham does run into financial difficulties from then, how will those 40% affordable homes be delivered? What will happen if Gorham becomes financially challenged?
You're one of the councillors in charge of the housing company, aren't you?
Oh, aren't we all by that standard? I'm asking this committee if I can get any insight on that, please.
Yeah, I will, if that's okay, Councillor McAllister, pass over to Louise Davidson to answer that.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, Councillor, the actual development finance for the Baltic Wharf scheme is coming from Hill. Gorham Homes will put in the land. They will not be the organisation responsible for actually funding the construction of the scheme. So it is the cost of actually building out the scheme will fall on Hill, who are a very large and financially stable development company.
Okay, thank you very much. Regarding my second question, please, I do understand that the delivery of the affordable housing is intended to be secured from a contract between the council via Gorham Homes and S&G. I've had the leader of the council's assurance he won't permit any sort of backsliding in the interim period between this meeting and the contract being signed, but please can we get an indication of when that contract will be signed, assuming that consent is granted today?
I'm afraid that's one we're going to have to come back to you on because I'd need to talk to our colleagues at S&G about when their board is and when they'll then enter into that contract.
Thank you. If I may, is there any indication of rough timescales, please? I appreciate we're going into the summer holiday period.
Maybe Councillor Wilcox is going to speak soon, so perhaps as the council-appointed director, he would be able to elaborate on that. But again, it's not really a planning matter. We just have to consider this before us at the moment. It's outside of that, I'm afraid. Next on is Mark Ashdown. You're down for a statement as well.
Well, thank you. I think I've established that there's no guarantee that affordable homes will be provided under this new application. When the last application was decided, it was considered regrettable that so many trees, I calculate 70 trees, would be lost as a consequence of this application. But when the plan put in the balance with the offer promise of affordable homes, the obligation of affordable homes, it was worth sacrificing those trees. Given what we've heard today, one wonders whether that balance has now, as it was in the previous matter you were discussing, tipped in the opposite direction. And I'm sure that's no less relevant to the other issues relating to planning balance, the flooding and other such like. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. I am a board member of Gorham Homes, and I recognise the hard work that Gorham Homes and the Hill Group have put into securing 40% affordable housing despite market challenges, supply chain disruptions, inflationary pressures, global market instability, the legacy funding gap in the council's HRA account, and planning delays all contributed to reducing offers from the potential housing association partners earlier this year. This has made it impossible to develop the affordable housing without grant funding. Baltic Walk is a fantastic scheme, 166 new homes in a prime harbourside location, including 66 affordable homes, approved by the Planning Committee in April 2024. Gorham Homes is establishing legal controls to guarantee that the 40% affordable housing, ensuring its delivery on the Baltic Wharf site. As a board member and a councillor, I will ensure this is achieved, and we need this affordable housing for our city, and the new Section 106 agreement we're discussing today will make it possible.
Thank you. Valerie Steele, a statement.
If this application is granted, this scheme could and probably would go ahead as 100% open market development. This would be outrageous. The original application was granted because it provided the full target percentage of affordable housing, subsidy-free on-site. This was accorded particularly significant weight, and it is questionable whether permission for this development would ever have been given without it. If the original proposal had been to undersell valuable council land to maximise the profits of a private developer in a conservation area at a height and massing wholly out of keeping with the surroundings, felling valuable trees in an area with one of the lowest levels of tree cover and providing nil affordable housing, do you consider it would ever have been granted permission? Yet by this Section 73 backdoor ruse, this is now a very real possibility if this application is granted. We came to expect political interference in the planning system under the previous administration, but hoped for a more transparent and accountable system when the Mayor went. I know the committee desperately wants to believe that 40% affordable housing will somehow get delivered, but without a binding contract with
Thank you.
SNG
Could you
in
bring
place,
it to a conclusion,
this
please?
is very much a case of hope over experience.
Thank you, Valerie. Cristiana Macario, please.
I have a home that is warm and safe, and most likely you do too. Thousands of people across our city, including young families, are not as lucky. A tenant at our One Lock lease development told us that after years of living in temporary accommodation with her young son, she finally wakes up feeling safe. The housing challenges in our city are not unknown, and it's why Gorham Homes exists. It's why since 2018 we've been working on plans for 166 new homes at Baltic Wharf, which received cross-party approval last year. Our approved plans include 40% affordable housing, 50% for social rent and 16% for shared ownership. The housing market is challenging, but we will not compromise on this. Our role is to find solutions because you can't turn your back on the housing crisis. Today, we're asking committee members to approve a new way to deliver the affordable homes. Our partnership with SNG means they can be grant funded through money already secured from Homes England. No changes to our plans, no changes to the way the affordable housing is allocated. It's just investment to ensure these homes are built. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiana. Charlotte Curabosa. Thank you, Charlotte.
Hi. I'm here on behalf of the Hill Group. We're a family-owned development company and partner to Gorham Homes.
We've already been committed to Bristol for a number of years now, and we have over 700 homes in progress and on-site citywide in Bristol. More than half of these are affordable, including the recently completed MacArthur's warehouse just along the harbour side from this site. This application is a technical amendment allowing a new Section 106 agreement so the affordable homes can be grant funded. There are no changes to scheme design, to quality, and 40% affordable housing with 75% social rent remains the full intention. Since the original approval, rising costs and reduced funding have impacted viability across the sector, and notably the ability of registered providers to bid for new Section 106 homes. This amendment is a practical response, officer-led and backed by a full viability review to make the scheme deliverable without reducing the affordable offer. We remain fully committed to delivering high-quality, affordable homes for Bristol and ask for your support to move this forward to help deliver the homes Bristol really needs.
Thank you, Charlotte. Martin Rands.
Thank you. If this was just a private developer, the LPA would not have recommended grant. If granted, this will set a very bad precedent for future private developments if applicants can come back a year later and wipe all affordable obligations simply via Section 73. Resources and Scrutiny Committee recently, the boss of Gorham Homes said that a deal with Sovereign Housing would be signed by the time of this meeting. It hasn't been signed, so why hasn't this meeting been postponed until it has been? This scheme should not be granted consent until some mechanism to guarantee delivery is in place. Being simply asked by the council to trust Gorham Homes and Hill Construction is not a good planning reason for consent, and Gorham is only half of the joint venture. The officer recommendation spells out that with the delivery of 40% affordable, the development is projected to lose more than £2 million. It says that Gorham's objective is more than commercial, but as the company is owned 100% by the council, it should be commercially prudent and not take big risks with taxpayers' money. This development started with the prospect of 100% council
Thank you, Martin.
It could end up with 100% market rate housing.
Thank you very much, Martin. Professor John Tarleton.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This development has many problems, including being in the highest flood risk area with no safe escape route, felling 70 large trees with very few replacements possible, and losing an important tourist attraction and revenue earner for Bristol. The only thing balanced against this was the guarantee of 66 affordable homes, including 50 social rent council flats. We have already lost the 50 council flats, and we are now told that there is no guarantee for any affordable homes. This development now has no redeeming features. The question for the committee is whether, with all of the undesirable features still in place, with no legal certainty of any affordable homes, is it possible, just possible, that the original consent would have been refused? If the answer is yes, then this represents a significant material change, and this application should be rejected on that basis. I will also add there's nothing in the Section 106 about whether this should be a grant-funded or subsidised at all. So we could actually, this whole application is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Tarleton.
Thank you. We are being asked to replace a legally binding obligation to supply 40% affordable homes with a vague and unenforceable promise on the basis that the developer, Gorham Homes, is fully owned by Bristol City Council and therefore trustworthy. However, Gorham, as a commercial developer, has obligations to their commercial partners, Sovereign and Hills. If providing 40% affordable homes means that they will make a considerable loss, Gorham will be obliged to abandon this promise. Further, the CEO of Gorham Homes told the Strategy and Resources Committee that the contract with Sovereign would be completed prior to this meeting today. And now we are being told that this Section 73 consent must be obtained first. This demonstrates that Gorham are dependent upon the wishes of their partners, often contrary to their assurances to us. And verbal promises and intentions are not good enough.
Thank you very much. Anne Hughes-Devereux.
At the time of the 2024 planning meeting, both the developer and the planning office were aware of the developer's financial report, projecting a loss over £10 million. Planning officers assured the committee that this was not a problem and would not necessitate any subsidy. So it is untruthful to claim that a recent report projecting a slightly reduced loss represents a worsening financial situation, and to justify the current application on the basis of this is misleading. It seems that this is invented deterioration in finances is being used as a pretext to replace a legally binding guarantee of 40% affordable homes with a non-enforceable verbal promise. This promise is likely to go the same way as the promise of 162 replacement trees, and by approving this application, there will no longer be any means to challenge this.
Thank you. And Tom Edwards.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of SNG, a registered provider managing over 85,000 homes across the south of England, including approximately 1,900 in Bristol. We aspire to deliver 2,500 homes a year to meet our purpose, the provision of good, affordable homes, the foundation for a better life. We have a strong track record of delivering affordable housing in the city, and we're looking forward to building on this in our involvement in Baltic Wharf. SNG has a successful relationship with Hill Group, nationally and locally, and we're delivering 45 affordable homes currently across the city, College Road and Raleigh Road. For Baltic Wharf, we're delighted to have been selected by Hill Group and Gorham Homes as the affordable housing partner, with plans to deliver the much-needed affordable homes, of which there are 66. We are progressing internal approvals to acquire these homes, but that depends on the success of this Section 73 application. Approval will unlock vital grant funds from a partnership with Homes England, without which the scheme isn't viable. With a new Section 106 agreement in place, we can secure approval to contract to deliver these homes to the agreed and approved design and tenure. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Michelle Maurice, I think Anita Bennett is going to read her statement. Is that correct?
I think everybody has her statement in front of you. Michelle was hoping to get here tonight, but she has a severely disabled son and she couldn't get anybody to look after him, Declan. So she's asked me to remind the council, because I think a lot of you are new members to the council, that over 50,000 signatures were gained for a petition to create an disabled adult playground. Nothing was done about it. Not one council officer took up the job to do that. So we're taking up the job, and we're proposing that the Baltic Wharf, which is publicly owned land, which is in effect being given away to Hills, become a memorial park to the unknown slave, as well as a disabled adults play park. And we will be putting in a planning permission to create such a park, because it's the right thing to do. At the Harbour Committee, some of you may have been in attendance, one of the key members of the Harbour Committee spoke about the need to capitalise on the city's existing assets by lying and saying that the land is only worth 1.8.
Your time
We're actually missing the possibility of creating something really good for this city, John.
Yes, thank you very
really
much.
Good. So
Thank you. Your time is up, and you've got your own statement in a moment, so I'm not cutting you short without giving you a chance to continue what you were saying, obviously. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. I don't intend to rehash my written statement or my public forum questions to this committee or Homes and Housing recently, and also just acknowledge this isn't a meeting to hear the April 2024 planning consent. As local councillor, my position's always been that we are where we are following that meeting, and we should try and make the best of the situation we've got. So that's what we've been trying to do. I've been concerned about this application, so I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about this, including the Chair of Homes and Housing and the Leader of the Council. And I did receive very firm assurances from all involved that at the political level, the contract that Gorham intends to sign with S&G there won't be any backsliding on that. And if I hadn't received that, I would be asking you to vote against this. The affordable housing is something the city needs. The issue is, it's a really complicated application. There's a lot of legalese in here. And I'd really urge the committee, interrogate this properly to your own satisfaction. Make sure you understand it fully and make sure you're satisfied that the affordable housing is in fact secured. If 40% affordable housing cannot be delivered for the benefit of families on Bristol's housing register, then the application is wholly unsuitable. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you've had those discussions with the administration. Anita Bennett, you would like to continue perhaps? Thank you.
Yes, I got it. So I think you can all read the statement that I've given. I don't need to report it. I don't need to repeat myself. I'd just like to offer a song. And it's called Our Maples Are Our Cathedral. Our maples are our cathedral, the northern sky its dome. They all call it Baltic Wharf, but we call it home. 'Twas ever but a timber yard that built the big slave ships. So many perished on the seas with prayers on their lips. So the tree brides pledged our solemn vows to stand by the trees. So help us build a public park and force greed to its knees. Thank you.
Thank you. Very tuneful. Thank you. Stephen Wickham?
Follow that then.
Difficult.
It's extremely disappointing to see the continuous watering down of affordable housing on desirable waterfront sites. Both these this evening are, particularly here on a flagship project of the former mayoral cabinet. We had our own different views on the harms. The proposal always had an aura of FB application, too prestigious for the council to act on local group requests for views from the adjacent conservation area's panorama points to the south of the river. The Caravan Club have been such good neighbours to us and the local pubs and restaurants for decades. All such arguments were swept aside last year in favour of the affordable housing. It's a decision trump card in 2024. Whatever today's outcome, we would be extremely concerned that this plot doesn't come back for further mass through accommodation on viability grounds as a next step in a drip creep basis. MacArthur's did that and looks like a cattle shed blocking out the Wills Tower from Southfield side in the Bedminster Conservation Area. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Ruth Pitter?
I'm speaking for Ruth Peter, and in addition, I would just like to begin by saying that surely, in the circumstances in which Bristol finds itself, the public land is for Bristol people and not for luxury flats for the rich. And you may or may not be aware, hopefully you will be, that Ruth and Michelle Morris were among 73 brides who are now asking you to pause and reconsider the use of this rare public greenfield site. Says Ruth, now that we are enjoying a more collaborative elected council, can we all agree that rather than gift Baltic Wharf to Gorham Homes and private developers, we can put it to better public use? In utter frustration at unkept promises, some young people threw the Colton statue into the Bristol harbour. Why not take...
Please conclude.
Why not take the adult step of making concrete reparations to fallen slaves and their children and grandchildren? Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will have our presentation, officer presentation from Jim.
Right, up on there, isn't there? You'll be used to seeing presentations by officers with a load of slides. And usually when I'm here, it's just to talk about a little bit on the edge relating to development viability. But this is only about viability. It's about nothing else. And if I were to put some slides up, I could show you the scheme as granted and the scheme as proposed, and it would be like spot the difference. They're absolutely identical. There is absolutely no change proposed at all in the design of the scheme, in the relevant conditions that are required to ensure the scheme is built as it should be, and in the relevant obligations required to mitigate the scheme's impact. The only issue being considered today is the scheme viability. Now, we've heard a lot of people have taken the time to come here today and give their views, and we've heard a lot about grant-funded affordable housing. We've heard a lot from Gorham, from SNG, from Councillor Wilcox, and from Louise about what is intended and expected to happen on site. And I, as just a planning officer, as an officer of the council, I'm absolutely sure that that is what will happen. But what is being proposed, the grant-funded side of things, whilst hugely welcome, is outside of the planning system. And that's really important, members, for you to understand that. We've spoken a lot about it. We've heard a lot about it. The crux of the matter that we're being asked, or that we're asking you to consider, is as follows. And Jonathan, if you can just click next. There we go. And I'll keep this slide up because, well, it's the only one I've got. But I'll keep it up because we need to keep reminding ourselves this is the issue. The issue is that Gorham have claimed that the scheme is unviable and undeliverable with 40% subsidy-free affordable housing. And they've submitted a report produced for them by Redloft. The Planning Authority has appointed, as with the last scheme, Cushman and Wakefield, to undertake its own independent assessment of the scheme viability, to inform us and to advise us as to what the best possible situation is. Cushman and Wakefield have completed their report and they've advised. And they advise that the scheme is marginally viable as a wholly open market scheme, which put simply means it just about washes its face with no affordable housing. I refer you back to Martin Rand's question earlier, or was it Mark Ashdown's, I can't remember, about will there be affordable housing on the site? In planning terms, what we are saying to you is that the scheme can provide an off-site contribution of £240,000. That would not translate to affordable housing units on site because there is no affordable housing provider that will be interested in taking such a small number. The reason that we are recommending approval on this basis is because A, we're independently advised that this is the maximum that can be provided, and B, unlike perhaps the Bart Spices scheme, where there clearly was a balance, having looked back over the minutes of the committee meeting from April last year and looked back over the discussion, there were issues about flooding, but the Environment Agency have reduced any objection that they had. There were issues about trees, and they're covered off in the Section 106 agreement, and that will be carried forward to a new Section 106 agreement if planning permission is granted. But there were very few dissenting voices. In fact, I don't recall any dissenting voices about the quality of what was being proposed, the design, how it sat on the landscape. There were some issues about views, I will acknowledge, but generally officers and those people talking about the scheme, officers, members and those people talking about the scheme were supportive of it. So that balance, that sort of tilted balance, call it what you will, is less of an issue in this particular instance because the design of the scheme was broadly welcomed and there were no great issues about approving the quality of the design. So whilst we're looking at a scheme now that is identical, the key issue is that it has been independently assessed that it cannot deliver the level of affordable housing that it initially intended to do. And in planning terms, it is acceptable with the reduced level of affordable housing. What we propose, and what is important to bear in mind, is that we have to determine this application in accordance with national and local planning policies. So what we propose to do, or what we are asking you to do, is to approve the scheme with a Section 106 obligation for the financial contribution of £240,000 and a viability review to be undertaken at the end of the scheme when it's occupied to see if any more affordable housing can be provided. What we also propose to do is to say that obligation will fall away if the applicant and SNG enter into a deal to deliver the 40% housing that's been spoken about in a grant-funded way. So we will either get an open market scheme with £242,000, and that's what we're recommending in planning terms. You'll have heard and read in the report that actually there's no intention of delivering that. Gorham Homes aren't set up to do that. That's what we're looking at in planning terms. So you'll either get that, or if outside of the planning system, as has been mentioned by a number of speakers this evening, if outside of the planning system, that deal is entered into between SNG and Gorham and Hill, we will then get 40% affordable housing on site, but that will be delivered using Homes England grant. So that's where we're at with this. But the planning situation is as set out on that slide, and that's what we are recommending approval for, even though it may be highly unlikely that that's what eventually is delivered.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, so questions. Councillor Durston.
Thank you. And I know we're here to consider the viability, but I do have a question around the Homes England grant and the kind of assurance or the likelihood that that is guaranteed.
Yeah. If you don't mind, Councillor Durston, can I ask Louise Davidson to pick that one up, because she will know, she has a far closer link with our affordable housing partners than I do, and will know more about the machinations as to how it works and how it's secured.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, Councillor, so SNG are what we call a strategic partner with Homes England. That means they are in a contract with Homes England to deliver a certain number of homes for a certain amount of pre-agreed subsidy. The homes on Baltic Wharf will be brought forward as part of that contract, if you like. So the funding for that is already secure. It's not that they have to go and bid for it at another time. It's sitting there waiting for them to actually deliver. Is that okay?
Thank you, Louise. Councillor Poultney.
Thank you, Chair. Begging your pardon, a few questions on this one. I wanted to ask, just annoyingly, the committee doesn't have legal advice present, but just in respect of the... Do we? Fabulous. Could I ask... Sorry.
We're ready for everything here, Councillor Poultney.
I say it's so unusual, but it's lovely to have. Thank you. Is the Homes England deal a material consideration this committee's entitled to take into account when forming a view? As in, is it something that we can consider at all? The intention to, the promise of?
No, because that is the grant-funded element. That's outside of the planning system, so that can't be taken into account in terms of your planning considerations.
Right, so we have to take into account the loss of the social housing, but we're not entitled to take into account any promise, intention, statement of hope that money that may have been received or not, because we can't challenge any of that if it's not a material consideration.
Jim, that's not quite what Jim said, is it, Jim? I think... Sorry. Would you like to clarify that?
Yeah. I mean, you can ask questions, but it shouldn't be something that is in the balance when you take in, when you make your decision, because it's outside of planning.
Great, thank you. Next question was a technical.
Yeah, I think, can I just clarify with Jim what he said, because the planning decision is not quite that we don't take into account the grant, but we also have a fallback position, don't we, in terms of Section 106 contribution, which is a planning matter.
So the planning consideration is the scheme acceptable on the basis of that slide there, which is the open market scheme with £240,000 worth of 106 contribution. That would be secured, as I think I previously mentioned, through a Section 106 agreement if members were happy with that. But the Section 106 agreement would also allow for the grant-funded scheme to come forward and for those contributions to fall away. So that's where we were getting at. But as Dawn said, in determining the application, we have to determine it in accordance with local and national planning policies and pretty much nothing else. That's right, isn't it, Jonathan? That's what we're limited to. If members felt that the scheme was unacceptable with the level of obligations set up there, it would be open to them to refuse it. I would strongly advise against that because it's not a decision that would be defendable at a planning appeal. And I know that's not what you want me to say, but I have to be honest with you. When you've got a viability consultant acting independently for the council, and Cushman and Wakefield have no axe to grind in this, they've got no skin in the game, they're just advising us as to their professional opinion. If the advice is that the maximum that something could be provided is what is shown on the screen there, then it would be very difficult to defend an appeal were members to wish to refuse the scheme, which is why really it's important that we bring it back to you, but why it's important that we set out that it is about the scheme viability and nothing else. So whilst we've mentioned really for information in the report about the grant funding, and we've heard a lot about it, we must be really careful not to take account of the availability of grant funding in deliberations and determining this application.
Thank you. So the answer was no, for clarity.
You said it so much more succinctly than me.
Second question, briefly again. I just wanted to check calculation, obviously Cushman and Wakefield on both ones. What interested me was that the profit calculation on this one for the developer's take-home is, my estimate was £7.912 million in profit after costs for the developer in this case. Obviously, that's based on a 17 point something or other percent profit. Obviously, the previous application was a 10% profit margin, which suggests that the profit is something that is negotiable or not within that calculation. I was just wondering how that figure had been arrived at, and was it possible to say how much of that fell on the council, how much of it fell on the private developer? Thanks.
Yes, it's a very fair question. The difference is that the Bart Spices scheme is of the type of scheme of which we're seeing many of these days, which is called an institutional build-to-rent scheme. So the properties, when they're completed, the developer will hold hold the buildings, hold the scheme, and will rent the properties out through a build-to-rent sort of process where they're offering secure long-term tenancies. They're quite expensive to rent. And what that means is because the developer's holding on to the property, they're not exposed to the risk of the market going pear-shaped at the point at which they complete and want to sell everything. So they're able to develop at a much lower level of profit because the risk is much less. It's the same as purpose-built student accommodation. There's much less risk to it because you've basically got an ongoing rental stream. So a 10% profit on cost is broadly where an agreed position has sort of morphed to over the years. With this particular scheme, with Baltic Wharf is a very traditional build-to-sell scheme. So, the idea is the developer builds the scheme out, markets them, and sells them. And the thing with high-density city centre schemes is it's like in for a penny, in for a pound, basically. Once you started building a flatted block, you're in it. You've committed, you've got a contract in place, and you've got to finish it. Whereas if you're building a traditional Barratt Homes scheme in suburban Bristol, you can build a few, sell a few, build a few, sell a few. You're not building them all at the same time. You build a high-density flatted scheme in the city centre, and you're all in at the point at which you get going, which means you are very, very exposed to changes in the market in the year or 18 months it takes you to build the thing. And in those development scenarios, a much higher profit level is expected and to be expected. And the government's planning practice guidance identifies that for standard residential schemes, build to sell schemes, you would expect to see a profit level of between 20% and 15%. So 15% may be your standard suburban housing estate, where much lower risk, 20% great big single high density blocks in the city centre area. This one falls, it's 2 or 3 different blocks. It's not a huge number of units. It's a lot for us in Bristol, but compared to schemes in London and what have you, it's not a huge number. And therefore it was felt that a profit margin of 17.5% was an appropriate margin. So that's why it's different from Bart Spices, because it's a different product that's being provided.
Right, thank you. That was again, very comprehensive. Thank you. I suppose in that context, what happens then if given that Hill's costs have gone up in the last year to render all of the social housing unviable, what happens if their costs rise again over the development
You're getting
period?
rather speculative again here.
I'm asking the office to speculate.
Okay. Well, you have the discussion to speculate in, but I'll allow you to put that question again.
So planning viability is a funny thing. It requires all costs and all values are done at today's values. Whereas in reality, if you're using today's costs, you should use tomorrow's values, in effect, because you're selling the thing in 18 months' time, or you should use today's values and yesterday's costs. But planning viability is really clear. You have to do today's costs, today's values. And the viability work that Cushman and Wakefield has been done on that basis. Councillor Alexander is actually right. It's not for us to speculate what might happen moving forward. Again, and I need to be mindful and warn you that it's outside of the planning process, but my understanding is that assuming that SNG do enter into a contract with Hill and with Gorham, then that sets all their costs. So, it's like you enter into a build contract, and that's it then. Those costs are set, and the contractor is required to build for whatever that agreed cost is. So I would assume that assuming that process happens, those costs will be set and will be, the builder makes a profit as well, and the builders make a profit. So the builder will allow some slack in their profit margin. Does that make sense? You contract a builder to do something for you, and they're making a profit as well.
Yes, thank you. That's very clear. Final question, promise, Chair, but it's a direct one to you, if that's okay. I saw in your answer to question 1, to Mark Ashdown's question, you had said, the developers confirmed they have no intention of delivering an open market scheme and intend to enter into a contract with SNG. Consequently, the 50 social rent and 16 shared ownership properties committed to will be delivered on site. You underlined the word will. And I was just wondering how you know that.
Well, on the basis of Councillor Wilcox's comment, as one of he holds the position which I formerly held, which is the council-appointed director, and I presume he speaks for the administration on this matter. It was the choice of this current administration to move towards this different model of delivering social housing. It may not be something that I agree with, but I do trust that Councillor Wilcox speaks for the administration on that.
Okay, thank you. Very clear.
Do we have... Councillor Finch.
Thanks very much. A couple of questions from me. So firstly, I wondered, obviously there's been a few calls that we had in public forum for, questions about why the contract with SNG hasn't already been signed, and questions about whether we could postpone until that was signed. Is that a possibility?
I don't think so. I might ask Louise to chip in a little bit, but I think you'd be in just a never-ending circle of non-decision making, because I believe that SNG are not in a position, as in their constitution doesn't allow them to take funding decisions until there are the relevant planning decisions in place. They can't take funding decisions on it's likely to be approved. So I think that's I may be wrong, but I think that's the situation. I'll ask Louise if she can just correct me or confirm otherwise.
Thanks, Tim. No, Councillor, the RP, SNG, would not contract unless they knew they could put grant into the scheme. Otherwise, they're contracting to pay for something they can't afford to deliver. So they need to know that they can put the Homes England funding in before they will contract with Gorham and Hill.
There couldn't be like a conditional term within the contract.
S&G have made a statement today about their intention to contract. A conditional contract wasn't ever considered.
Thanks. We deal with the applications put before us. The questions you are asking surrounding the administration's approach, that's up to them. We have to deal with what's in front of us. We can't demand assurances outside of the planning process. Councillor Finch, you have another question?
It's okay. I think it might be deemed as outside of it, so I'll leave that.
Are you sure? Okay. Anybody else got any questions? No? Then we move to discussion. Councillor Eddy's hand is gone up. Not very high, Councillor Eddy. A little higher in future. I missed you last time.
A wee bit petite like most of us, Chairman. This is my second day of the amendment this evening. I chaired, obviously, the first original decision, and I chaired this one last year, though I would hope the result of the outcome of the debate is somewhat different. Last April's decision was actually a week, or just over a week before the election. It was obviously a contentious site, and it also politically quite contentious, and it did surprise me. We did have all-party support, and in my view, that was really a reflection of the recognition of the need to address Bristol's housing crisis, and the fact that we proposed quite a high proportion of what the applicant did of affordable housing. Obviously, we had debate in the last session about how it's getting more difficult, and we hear from Jim Cliff's report about the restrictions on housing associations as a result, well, as we found, with our own social housing regulator judgment, of course. So we have to look imaginatively, and I believe the officers have done that, and in their discussions with the Homes England and also with, obviously, the applicant and the former Sovereign Housing Association. Can I thank both Jim Cliff and also Louise Davidson for what I deem what my grandmother, who Bristolian gran, used to call copper-bottom common sense. Common sense isn't that common, certainly in this chamber, of course. But we have heard, if we want to achieve this, if we want to achieve either off-site or the preferences on-site up to 40% affordable housing, I would urge members to back this, what is a technical but an important Section 723 application. Please do so. Only in that way are we going to make further progress to tackling Bristol's housing crisis.
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. Next person on my list. Anybody else wish to make any comments? Contribute to discussion? Councillor Pulteney, you don't have to. Is there a hand up and I missed it? Sorry? No? Councillor Pulteney, floor is yours.
Oh, thank you,
For
Chair.
a short time.
Oh, bless you. I'll do my best. It's one of those things, and I feel the need to just make sure that I'm absolutely clear about this. It's always difficult when you get two applications that have a lot of quite similar considerations back to back, that you don't forget to mention any of the things in the first application in the second one, and can't form the basis for your reasoning. But obviously this is another case of a tilted balance. And in another case where a tilted balance is affected by the dropping off of a significant volume of affordable housing. And again, a situation where there's a site someone could bring forward an alternative scheme, one that's more viable, maybe one that's taller, maybe one that's denser, whatever it might be, but one that can deliver more affordable housing than one. I do think it's a huge shame that we can't be more clear about this plan to deliver affordable housing on this site based on, I'm sure, very well-meant assurances, a desire not to see any further backsliding, a certainty even from the chair that there will be no further backsliding. But I would kind of ask, if we can be so certain that there won't be any backsliding, why couldn't the same forces be brought to bear to stop this backslide happening? How's it gotten this far? How do we know this is the end? So when you look through the application, it makes it very clear. Public sector's contribution to this has been the land and a significant grant that came in because of the belief that, somewhat disputed, that this is brownfield land. Fine. If the developer's costs go up again, what happens? Do we end up with a scheme that can't be proceeded upon?
It's simple, Councillor Portney. Your administration will have to decide what to do about it because you're in charge.
Oh, Chair, as you've so often reminded us, and I'm afraid I'll have to remind you that obviously we would never dream of politicising the planning process. This has nothing to do with an administration.
I'm sorry, but you're stating
what's in front of us now.
Your tendency to hypothesise is used for political purpose, and it suggests something which isn't true, which is that we don't know what will happen. The truth is that the administration of this council will have to take action, as it has done already, to bring us to the current situation. That's the truth. It's not me politicising it. Carry on.
Well, I'm glad to know that you're so certain about what will happen in respect of the market conditions, in respect of the viability.
I am not. I'm just certain
forwards.
about who will make the decisions.
Chair, I don't believe anyone else has been interrupted twice.
Thank you.
That's
I do
new.
Sort of apologise. Continue.
Oh, it's perfectly welcome, Chair.
Richard Eddy appreciates my apology, don't you, Richard?
I'm sure he does. Sorry, I think that was particularly great for the public, but I'll just try and come to the end quickly. On those grounds, I don't feel I can vote for this in its current form. It seems to be quite a substantial loss of social housing. It's great to provide 166 unaffordable housing units, but if we're to really address the housing crisis, I don't feel we can afford to lose a site like this on the grounds that this particular scheme is unviable. My view is, again, that we need to be providing that social housing. We need to stick to that commitment to provide social housing. If there is something that can be given to us by way of guarantee, certainty, fantastic. But we can't take any of that into account today. I really wish we could have been convinced further. But statements that we will, I'm really sorry. I don't see how the people saying that things are so definite can be sure that they are quite that definite.
Oh. Interesting. Councillor Finch.
Could I ask a question? Or
no, I'm afraid you can't. That was earlier.
Okay, thank
but
you.
But you can make a comment that has a sort of question mark at the end of it or something.
And it might be answered, do you mean?
Try me.
Okay. So, yeah, obviously we're looking at this recommendation and this this amount of 242. I just wondered if anything didn't go as we were expecting it to go, and we did end up in that position of sort of what's just written on the slide, is there any way of putting in any sort of condition that, for example, let's say that the viability study comes back slightly different than it was before, that it needs to come back to this committee? Is there any way of it needing to come back if it does get to that point? Is there any way of writing anything like that into it?
Yes, please answer it, Jim. Caught me at a weak moment.
So there's no intention of any future viability study being done unless the scheme comes forward as an open market scheme, and in that case the viability would be done when the scheme was occupied. So it's the scheme's built by then, Councillor Finch, so you wouldn't really be able to have, there's no control that the planning committee could have, because once the scheme's built, we'd reassess the viability, and it would say either, yes, it can't provide any more, or actually it can provide a few more units or a few more £100,000 or whatever. But that would just be a matter between two sets of viability consultants to deal with, and then there would be some sort of a, you know, if they couldn't reach agreement, we could report that back to committee, but the scheme will still be built. You know, there is no viability now to be done until the scheme is completed, and that would be, you know, some years down the line. So it wouldn't help with the situation that you're talking about now, because the intention would be that if the open market scheme came forward, a viability clause will go in the Section 106 agreement, so that can be sorted out today, but the actual viability review itself will be done some years down the line.
Councillor Gooch.
Yeah, I'm just struggling with the sums, I suppose, really. When you think about it, the land is free because we already own it. So what this is saying is that we cannot afford to build because there is no money in building, effectively, because there's 200 and only, you know, and that would be, that's less than the value of the land, is the amount of viability. So that's effectively saying that there is no money in building, which is patently untrue. So it's, yeah, I'm just struggling to get my head around it, really.
Okay, I won't allow any more questions, so that I'll take that as a comment. Yeah. Are there any further comments, Councillor Poultney?
It was just to respond to Councillor Gooch's point, and apologies. This took me a while to get my head around as well. If you look at the viability study from Cushon Wakefield, it makes the way that it stacks up really, really clear in terms of the assessment of the value of the land, the construction costs. And what it says is there is money in building. Right? The developer stands to make £7.9 million or thereabouts out of this. But after that's taken, all they can afford in terms of affordable is the 242. So their profit's built in. That's not part of the viability. They'll make that money, and then what's left, that is what's left over for the public value of the land.
And yeah, obviously we should be pleased about that, Councillor Poultney, because you are part owner of that company. So you should be pleased that it is making profits. This is our council company. So, you know. Do we have any further comments before we move? Richard? No, I was plead that we can move to the vote. Okay. Would you like to propose the Councillor Freeman? Is that a comment you're about to make, Councillor Durston?
And you're the opposite.
Does anyone wish to make a comment? Councillor Durston, sorry.
Thank you. This feels like a tricky decision, and I think, you know, we did have an assurance that social housing was going to be delivered from this site before it was removed from the housing revenue account. That would have assured that. Unfortunately, the decision was made to take that out. We have been given assurances today that the scheme will deliver 40% affordable housing, which is welcome. And it is a contrast to the previous scheme, but I do have concerns regarding our ability to then enforce this commitment. Now the scheme is no longer within the housing revenue account. I also really recognise the urgent need to bring forward new housing in our city, something which we are now seeing alarmingly little of in terms of new schemes. So I think I'm minded to support this today, but I do so with a real sense of realism and trust that this will be delivered by the administration, and I hope that this council will return to delivering more actual council homes from within the housing revenue account.
Thank you very much. Any further comments before we move to Councillor Freeman?
Just going to keep it really quick. Just want to really acknowledge the public feeling about this and the fact that so many of you have come here tonight. I know there's really strong feelings about this, and I hope that seeing this debate and how we are agonising, I don't think anybody's got a sort of straightforward view over this. We are all agonising over this, and it's a really difficult one, perhaps apart from Councillor Eddy. And I think also it's worth saying that we cannot stop planning happening on that site, even if we reject this. Is still the principle has still been agreed. This is a Section 73. It's not a planning application per se. So even if we turn this down, something's still going to happen on that site. Is what it is that is the issue, as I understand it. But I do want to just acknowledge that strength of feeling and how we are. You know, we are all struggling with this as well, as you've seen from the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch, are you want to make a comment or?
I just need to clarify something. Okay, I know we need to get on with it, but I want to make the right
We also had
decision.
a question session, and we're now on the debate.
I know. I'm just saying. I've just had it pointed out to me that there was 8 million, and obviously then I thought, oh yes, and that should be going to Gorham. So this will help us develop more council homes. That's the idea. So it's a yes or a no?
I think that's a very complex question that you need to go in at the Homes Board, Homes and Homes and Communities Board, because actually obviously the finances are what have led us to this, or rather the choices that have been made by the current administration have what have led to this. So I think you take that up with Councillor Parsons, perhaps, who's brought us all to this occasion. Okay, shall we vote now? Councillor Eddy, did you propose the officer's recommendation? Anyone wish to second the officer's recommendation? Sorry? It doesn't have to be the chair that proposes it. Right. Councillor Eddy proposes it. I am happy to second that proposal, which is the officer recommendation to approve. For those who wish to approve this application, could you please raise your hands now?
1, 2, 3.
Please, can you put your hands up and keep them up?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Councillor Calcioni, could you put 4? Right.
1,
4.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Votes against?
1 against.
1 against. Abstentions?
1 abstention.
1. Okay, then the application is approved. Thank you. Can I just say that the next meeting will be on the 27th of August at 6 p.m. I'd also like to say thank you to all of the officers who've attended, some of whom have given advice and some of whom we didn't call upon, but I do thank you anyway for coming along, for supporting us. Thank you.